Hello, and thank you for joining us today on the Gentle Art of Crushing It show, where we focus on learning and sharing with our listeners all there is to know about how to create success in our lives. This show stands on the shoulders of giants. Our mission is to empower and inspire our listeners to create the life of their dreams whilst having a blast in the process. Let's celebrate life together. Welcome to the show.
All right, welcome back to the Gentle Art of Crushing It podcast. My name is Randy Smith, and I'll be your host today. And I'm really excited to have Katie Kim with us today. Katie is the founder of the Kim Group, and they focus on development, Infill development specifically. And she's also the founder of the Katie Kim Education Program. So, Katie, welcome to the show. So excited to jump in and talk about Infill development today.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited to talk about it as well. Love it. It's my favorite topic.
I love it. Well, let's jump right in. Katie, can you give us your perspective on the current market and how that might be impacting the passive investors?
Yes. So a lot of our passive investors that we're talking with communication right now is what's going to happen as soon as the new administration gets in. So we don't talk about politics, whatever your party is, whatever your preference is. But every time we have a new administration, we have new rules to the game. So, the last time the Trump administration got into office, we saw the opportunity zones come and that advantage and a bunch of different things, right? Bonus depreciation, all those things. So those are a lot of questions I know our CPAs are getting hit with. Is bonus depreciation coming back? Should we look at it? And almost queuing up deals in order to see what comes down the pipe and which ones they're going to execute, which is a really interesting time to be on this side where now all of a sudden everybody's looking at now let's start growing again. Let's start, building what we need. We're also seeing a lot of the research and innovation research and development tax credits come into conversation, which we really haven't seen those in the past. And even each state is looking at it. So from an investor standpoint, the question is, where do I deploy my money, right? Where am I going to get the biggest return? Where am I going to get the biggest bang for the buck? And I think it's kind of a little bit of a wait and see for a little bit longer because we're looking at multifamily starting to make a comeback where it was pretty slow. And so we're starting to see some more things on that side. I'm not a big stock market person, so I'm not going to say put the money in the stock market, but I love real estate. I understand real estate. So that's where I'm going to say to look at that. And industrial, I think, is going to be something really, really big in 2025, especially with like I said, the R&D tax credits and a lot of the AI that's going into the money is going into that sector. So I think those are going to be, in my mind, the markets to watch. Services are always going to stay, pretty solid in that. And then really it's going to be watching what programs start coming down, which is really a daily thing, right? I mean, there's so much coming out. You have to almost get the daily digest of what's been signed, what's been permitted, what they're talking about, and go from there.
Are you interested in real estate investing but don't know where to get started or think you don't have the time or money? Are you stuck in your W-2 because the golden handcuffs make it hard to walk away? If this sounds like you, check out impactequity.net and schedule some time to talk with the founder, Randy Smith. Randy went from massive income to leaving his W-2 through passive income, and he can help you do the same. www.impactequity.net.
I love it. Well, I definitely want to dig into R&D tax credits, and I'd love to hear how you stay up to date and current on these trends that are going on. But before we do all of that, let's learn a little bit more about Katie, if we can. Can you tell the audience a little bit more, kind of your origin story and how you came to do what you do today?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. So I grew up in a construction real estate development family. And my grandfather actually started our family construction company back in 1948. Where he was actually, before that, working for a home builder, and his parents actually gave him, my parents, something like $5,000, which back in the day was huge, to go buy land and build a house. And then his boss came to him and he built it and he sold it immediately before it was even done. And his boss goes, "Wow, imagine if you did that full time, what you could do." And he comes back the next day, he quits and he launches our family company. So I kind of that origin story, grew up seeing everything as it was under construction. And as my husband now tells me, I have to call it potentially beautiful when you walk into those buildings and you're like, oh my gosh, this is horrible. But I'm always like, oh, this is perfect. We could do this and that and this. And so growing up in it, I always I make the joke, my parents don't like it, but I make the joke of like, I was a victim of child labor law because,
Sure.
I'd go to soccer practice and then come and build walls. And, really it was family bonding time. That's what they called it.
Sure.
So I got to see from an early age, the value of putting sweat equity into a deal and the value of knowing how to put a structure together and talking with people and building relationships. I mean, I would go to city council meetings and I would know, like, I think I pretty much knew all the city staff like at 16. And I was going down there talking about zoning, and I had to take a drafting class in high school so I could do blueprints for my mom. And then, like any good kid, I didn't want anything to do with the family business and went away to college. And because I was good in science and math, I got a computer science degree. And I loved that. I worked for the company that I traveled all the way around the world doing consulting work for. And I was in, I call it like the think tank. And we worked with technology 3 to 5 years to market and found strategic profitable solutions and then implemented them. And that's fast I can say without putting you to sleep, but keeping you focused here.
Sure.
But what I found is that I loved it. I loved going in and finding those different structures and the different way to put, deals together and projects. And then as life would happen, I went to work for an entrepreneurial startup company that eventually got bought out. And then was trying to figure out, like, what am I going to do with my life, right? I've worked in family business, worked in corporate, worked in startup. And my parents said, "Do you want to come home and run the family business?" And of course I was like, no, nope, I don't want to leave Chicago at the time. And what my husband and I realized is we really wanted to get into the development side, because when I graduated high school, or not high school, sorry, when I graduated college, I went to Chicago and I bought my first condo. And then the next year I bought another one and I bought another one. And it was, it's just kind of what you did, because that's what I grew up with. But I wanted to learn that development side, and how do you really start to like put your sweat equity in a deal? How do you put things together and make win-wins? And so we moved back to my hometown and started learning that family business. And I ran the construction company for 12 years and then found like, this is not where my passion was. I had a bunch of small businesses or aspiring developers come in and say, like small businesses would say, we want to expand our workforce, but we can't do that and build a building or buy a building. And I was thinking, we should be able to help them grow and do more. And I really took my nerd brain and figured out how to put those processes with some help to them, like some incentives and different structures. And then I gave my parents a year notice and launched our developer for fee service with the Kim Group, where we
Okay.
help investors and developers bridge that gap between investing and developing so that they can de-risk the process, have somebody hold their hand through, and really maximize their rate of return. And I found there was such a passion, and I love it. And I love helping people understand, how do you build wealth as opposed to just building cash flow.
I love
I
it.
don't want to say just
So
building cash flow, because cash flow is great, but
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you for walking me through that. That gives us a good perspective on your background and why we're talking to you about this developer for a fee strategy, which clearly you've got kind of this consulting background, which was at the core that you got from your education, and then you coupled that with your family business that really you married the two together to create what you have today. Let's dig in, if we can, a little bit about this developer for a fee, or like
developer for fee. Yeah.
develop for fee.
Yeah.
What does that look like exactly? And maybe talk about the type of client that you're serving and what it is that you're providing and the end solution, if we can.
Yeah. Yeah. So developer for fee, we can do the whole project for our client from beginning to end, or we plug and play with their existing team.
So
So
let's talk about that specifically. Like, what types of projects are we talking about? Are these like 2 or 3 person teams that are coming to you? Are these large investment companies that are coming to you? Like, what is that?
So more than likely, it is a single real estate investor or a business owner, or it's a couple of buddies that get together. A lot of times
Okay.
I get that,
Yeah.
like, "Hey, Katie,
Yeah.
I was getting together with my boys in the garage and we came up with this idea," and everybody's like, "Let's talk to Katie about it." Or like the joke they have is like, "What would Katie do with this property?" And
There you
so
go.
like
I love it.
that's what we talk about, which I love, because in our community we have those conversations, and those are like, I'm a kid in a candy store there, but. But it would be where, there, a lot of them are individuals that have been investing for a long time and they want to level up. They want to get into a different game and they want to kind of see, is this for them? And so the mix is all over the place. We've done offices, mixed use. We've done, some hospitality. We've done event centers, multifamily, urban
Sure.
infill. I think the thing that I said the other day, the only thing I have not developed is a jail that I
Okay.
can think of. Not saying I want to do that. I'm not speaking that
Sure.
into
Sure.
existence, but because of all the different, I mean, we did a lot of development as a construction company. We would do design build, like lease with an option to buy. And so I got a lot of experience with a wide range of projects because, in a smaller mid-sized market, you can, where when you're in a bigger market, a lot of times you really focus on one aspect, which is great. But, I was really fortunate to have really this wide purview of all these different parts of the process and being able to guide it through, where a lot of our clients don't have that yet. If you're an investor and you're buying a multifamily or a duplex or a fourplex, a lot of times you have a real estate agent and you have like half the network that you need from a development standpoint, but you have half. And so you start to step into it and go in. But a lot of people are afraid of the risk and the unknowns and what they're bringing by not knowing into the deal. So
Yeah,
we help them guide it
absolutely.
through.
Awesome. So you essentially help solve for the unknowns for people that are trying to stretch kind of and grow their empire and really step into new arenas. So, okay. So this could be somebody that's buying raw land. They could be tearing something down and rebuilding it. They're really any type of asset class, it sounds like. Are you finding a specific niche where you do your best work or something that you're most excited about? Or do you like having a variety of different types of projects?
Usually the more complex the project, that's usually when I get involved. Because if it's a typical like 80-20 development deal, a lot of times we'll connect them with the right partners and guide them. And it's really minimal guidance. But when a project either when something's like immovable is usually when it's kind of, again, what would Katie do? So if it's the vacant corner gas station lot where somebody thinks it's worth millions and it's holding up the downtown, like we'll figure out solutions on how to negotiate with the owner, get the new owner in and put the deal together. We've done that a couple times, taking older buildings that the city owns or park district owns that nobody knows what to do with.
Sure.
Yeah, it's kind of like if the project can't be done or it's hard to get done, or if it's a big growth, right? Like a lot of times when investors want to get into development, they know what they need from an investment standpoint. They can run the numbers, they're pretty smart. But now to look at development where you have like carrying costs, we have contingency, you have the unknown of permitting and construction, that's where we can come in. And a lot of times we'll come in and also bring knowledge of economic incentives and some tax credits and really start to play with some incentives that make the project cash flow better, that makes the numbers work a little bit better. Because a lot of those infill projects are hard to do and they usually are more they usually cost more than if you're on a greenfield site.
Got it. Got it. Okay. So you mentioned early on about tax credits and kind of special incentives that are available. And it seems as if it would be hard to roll this out across the whole country or do projects across the whole country. But are you seeing themes that are starting to arise in multiple municipalities or things that people can at least start to bring into their calculations to see if things could make sense at a high level?
Yes. So in our development academy, we have a whole module that talks about incentives because different areas call, like I would say 80% of the same incentives, different names. So like one might be a TIF district, a tax incremental finance district. It might be a PID or a PUD in another district. Same function in terms of how it's like structured and the strategy you would use it for, but it's a different name. And so different municipalities have a different way, but if you start to talk with them and say, hey, we've worked with this before, do you have this in your community? They will help come to the table on that. Now, I always warn people when you're working with incentives, it's kind of like anything else. Like when you're learning something, there's the level one learning, right? We all do. We all go to Google and we search like, so now somebody's listening to this, they're going to be like, oh, what's tax incremental financing? I'm going to see what a TIF district is. And you'll get a really cute picture. If you go to Google, I can tell you you're going to get this graph and everything. But that's level one learning. And so that's telling you what it is. And then you have to have level two learning, which is like, how do I use this in my strategy? How do I use this in my projects? And then you really have to get at level three where like you have to get in the game. And that's where like with our community, that's what we talk about is like, how are you applying this in your strategy and what are you doing in your projects? Because there's so many agents and investors out there that I could say TIF and they're saying, yeah, we're using it this way, or we're using it that way. Well, there may be like 6 other ways that they could have used it differently or that they could use it and they're not.
Sure.
And sometimes you get shot in the foot if you don't know all the details because you just, you kind of WebMD'd you, right? Like you're self-diagnosing your strategy. And that can be dangerous sometimes if people aren't properly trained, right? And properly educated.
Absolutely. And I could see how people with limited experience might have tried one angle that didn't work. So they immediately discredit it and say that that's not something that can work in any type of environment.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah, right. Like we all have the bad investment. And if you haven't done it long enough, right? So I mean, you all have the scar, and so it's like I'm never going to do that again. Versus, how do I learn from it? How do I protect myself? What's my risk mitigation strategy? That's a big one going into any development and or investment, right? Is I call it like the flight attendant conversation. Like, where are all my exits? Like, how do I get off this train or this airplane if I need to immediately because it's going down, but you can. And that's where if you don't have the right team in place, your team can inadvertently give you wrong information. There's a couple times I'm a licensed real estate agent in Illinois, and there's a couple times when I talk to agents about TIFs and they're like, well, you can tear this down and build a new building and you have all that increment. I'm like, but you don't have any QREs. And they're like, but you have all the increment. And I'm like, you have no clue what you're saying. Like, please don't guide somebody on something else. Or they'll say, you have this much in the TIF and you start to check it out. And it's like, it's up after this year. Like you're putting $100,000 into cash flow modeling that's not going to be there next year. Like, so if you don't know how to properly use the strategy and use the incentives, you really need to be trained on that because that can get pretty scary pretty quick.
So we talk a lot about affordable housing strategies. We've been doing a lot of projects with tax abatement. So I'm curious, do you have strategies that you've been focused on in that same space or office conversion or something that solves for the affordable housing piece specifically? Because everybody says we need more affordable housing, but you can't develop affordable housing necessarily. So curious your take on that.
Yeah. So I like to think outside the box, right? So I think it depends what, where, why, when, who, to be honest, on the affordability. So if we have a mixed use development where we have what's called a business development district, where we add a 1% sales tax on all the retail of the sales tax, right, in the development. And so most developers would add that to their bottom line. What we went into this project with was for the community, by the community in this development, because it was a public-private partnership. We went to the municipality and to the school district and said, hey, can we take part of our tax increment and part of our business development district, and can we put it into like a housing fund that if we did multifamily development on our property, we could create our own fund. And really it's the people creating it for the people, right? Instead of us tapping it to our bottom line, we still would, but it would bridge that gap. So for example, if it was $1,000 a month for a rental unit and say the renter could only pay $500, but they worked for a business in the development, they worked for the city, they worked for the school district, they could then apply for this fund. So those are different ways that we kind of change the game a little bit. And seeing like, how do you do it? A couple people else have done it, like New Jersey, there's a teachers village that are doing it over there. They took a old industrial place, an industrial campus, and renovated it. I think you see a lot of people getting really excited about tiny homes. I'm dying to do like a whole tiny home village with some mixed use in there. Anybody listening, I'd be totally happy to collaborate with you on that. I've drawn multiple developments, and we're actually working with a couple in the Texas Triangle because of the housing cost. I mean, and it's, and nobody has as much, like the younger generation is so transient. So they don't, like, I think of all my nephews that are in their 20s, they don't want to buy a house and settle down. They want to, move where the hot area is in different parts of
Sure.
town.
Sure.
So, the tiny home would be perfect for them, right? And they can start getting equity, they can start building up, and they don't have as much stuff as a lot of us do older in life. But
Yeah.
I think affordability comes down to that again: who, what, where, when, how. Because we need to get away. This is my economic development hat on. We need to get away from these big, massive complexes. And we've done a couple of proposals for how do you disperse those types of campuses up and partner and avoid the not in my backyard. And
Yep.
I think it really comes to having your community. It has having those investors come in to the deal that says, hey, I want to get in the investment game. I want to do it.
Yeah. We recently had, and you might know Darren Christensen. Have you met with Darren?
I know I've Darren Christensen. Yeah.
Yeah. So Darren, I believe, is in the Triangle as well. And he is doing a tiny home type manufactured facility that I can't remember the numbers of the units that he's going to create, but it's like a 200-mile radius of the manufacturing facility that,
Oh, wow.
like he can only service that area because these are units that you got to throw in a truck and you got to truck them and install them somewhere. But I think
Yeah.
it was something like 500 to 1,000 units per year that he's going to be able to run off this manufacturing facility in the Triangle specifically, that
Wow.
he's looking to help develop those type of communities as well. So that might be somebody that you want to reach out to, and sounds like he might be in your backyard as well and focusing in an area where you
That would
work
be
in. So
great connection. I appreciate that.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, because there's a couple, again, the communities that we're working with down here, they have that issue, right, of the affordability. The other thing is they own land. So they own land that's not on the tax roll. They have an affordability issue. Like, let's partner, right? Like, let's put this together and figure it out. I
Yeah,
love
and it
that.
sounds like the new administration coming in has government land as well that they're probably going to be looking
Mm,
at similar type of opportunities as well. So yeah, very interesting. Okay, so I like to ask that question because everybody likes to build big, beautiful A class,
mm,
$3,800 a month units, but we
yeah.
really have a challenge in that B and C arena where
Mhm.
the blue collar folks are working. And it's great to invest and make money and do well for yourself, but it's also nice to be able to do those and also help an underserved community that is screaming for that type of solution. So very good.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's where people got excited. I think people are still excited about like the mobile home parks, right? Of getting and investing, and then even like seller financing the lots or the buildings. Like, you like put that same model with tiny homes, right? And
Exactly.
there's a couple in wine country here that they're doing that, and it's a community, and it's
Hmm.
beautiful, and it's really cute. And there's a lot of like Moab, we travel a lot. So those were gorgeous. I mean, it's hard to have a bad view when you're looking at the mountains there, but
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. I think I'm starting to look more and more at mobile home. My very first passive investment was a mobile home fund. Municipalities, of course, don't like mobile homes, but some like tiny home communities, which is weird to me because essentially it's the same thing, just a little bit
mhm.
smaller than traditional mobile home.
But
But
they're cuter. That's why they're
I guess they're
cuter.
cuter. Yeah, they're absolutely cuter, definitely. And they don't have the stigma of the old metal, ugly mobile homes, which I get.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. Well, let's talk, if we can, a little bit about this community you have, the mastermind, like how you're educating folks, because this is an underserved community as well, where people that
Hmm.
are passive investors that are thinking about doing more, or even active investors, single family guys that are looking to do more. Like, what could they get with the community that you own and run?
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that question. So I'm a firm believer, as you know, I'm again nerd brain, right? So I love learning, and I love learning, and then putting, like I say, putting the content is one thing, but putting the context around it is really what I wanted to do. Because could you level one? Could you Google how to do a development? Yes, you absolutely could. You know, but you won't have the right strategy. You won't have somebody holding your hand. You won't have a mentor. And that's what I love about what we created the community is we have the course material. Yes. So the course material will take you through from beginning to end. And I mean, we start with creating a PFS, a personal financial statement, creating your network, talking about the 7 different phases of development. Like, what do you want to niche into? And we really want to expose everybody to the opportunities that you have in development, because fix and flip, that's a form of development. Yes. Are you maximizing all the ways you can develop in there? I don't know. What we did is really streamline that. So no matter what product type, no matter what development phase, you get that from beginning to end, and the education to take you through the process. How do you keep the deal from failing? Because development deals will fail about 20 times at least, and get it to close, and then manage it. And then we actually have a couple bonus modules about, managing construction and overseeing that, because I wanted to bring that education into it as well, because a lot of people don't know what they don't know about construction sites. And so they trust blindly without even vetting contractors a lot of times, which gets scary. Then through that, my community, we're based on Kajabi, as I know a lot of platforms are. But so we have that forum that they can ask a question at any time. And I am like obsessed with pouring into my community. And a lot of times when they ask a question, I'm doing a 20 minute video, like to detail it out. Like the other day, a guy said, he's like, hey, I got some buddies and I want to buy a property in California. We want to put an ADU on it. How would you structure that deal? And so what I did is I recorded myself thinking out loud and saying like this from the stock structure and all that. And we put it out there for resource. And now everybody gets to benefit from it. We have real estate agents in our community. We have other developers in our community. One came last week to our Q&A, and she was like, the city wants me to put all these additional costs on my project that I don't need to, I shouldn't, And it's like, let's walk through this. We started walking through, I think, about 4 or 5 different additional costs that they were asking her to put on and ways to mitigate them. And within 45 minutes, we saved her over $510,000 on project cost. So, if I go back and say, did you pay for your course? It's like, yeah, 100 times over almost, right?
Sure.
So, yes. And that's what I want people to be in the room, right? To be in the arena, because that's the context that you don't get from just reading something or, not being in the game. As when you, if you syndicate or you invest, that there's so many different ways to structure a deal that when you run up to that resistance, it's like, okay, Katie, like, what would you do here? Like we talked about, before, I think it was before we even started recording, it was like, what would Katie do? Right. What would you think through? What's the thoughts and how do you structure it so it's a win-win-win? And that was an unexpected like gift of doing the academy, was just being able to be that resource for people, as people were for me when I was building my career.
I love it. So how can folks that are listening find Katie Kim in the mastermind and in all that you're doing?
Yeah. So our website, katiekim.com, KATIEKIM.com.
Yeah.
And click Academy and you'll see that. Now we do ask to book a call because we want to make sure you're a good fit, because we do have a tight-knit community. We'll ask some questions and see if it's right for you. And you can find us on social media at the Katie Kim. Katie Kim was taken for some reasons. But we also do like knowledge nuggets and money math on our socials. So we want to really teach that financial education so that when you're ready, to take that next step, you have a base knowledge.
So what's next is it the goal now just to build this community, or do you have any projects that you're personally working on that you're excited about right now, or what's next for Katie Kim?
I'm not stopping. That's what somebody asked me, like, you stop developing? I'm like, no, not at all. I can't. So we have a couple public-private partnerships that we're working on in the Texas Triangle. We're finishing up a couple projects in the Midwest. And then we're doing a lot of consulting work on the coast, actually. So that I love because, again, I love pouring into people and really teaching them the process and getting that love for development. I had something else on the top of my head I was going to share with you. I couldn't think of it. But yeah, so no, I'm still developing, and some projects we're working on is really those impactful urban infill and ripple effects, more so in the Texas Triangle, because you're starting to see a lot of that development move towards what I call like the exit on ramps. for the interstate where you got the big boxes and everybody wants to do those massive developments right by them. Well, now our downtowns are like vacant and blighted, and we want to bring the community back. So yeah.
Well, awesome, Katie. This has been, yeah, you've opened my eyes to a whole new arena that I've never really even dug into. I like the infill process. I've gotten excited about that in years past, but like you said, like I look at that and I think that would be so much fun to do, but God, I am so scared to get into an arena that I have no idea what's going on there. And it sounds like your community could be a great opportunity to come in and take that next step to learn whether that's something I want to do even. So very cool.
Definitely. And it's a safe space. We're gentle.
Love it.
We motivate, and that's it, right? We have a lot of investors that say, I wish I would have gotten into this earlier, but I just didn't know how and who to have on the team. So again, I was blessed at a very early age to have some great mentors, and so just want to really give back. And so yeah.
Awesome. Well, very good. Well, this has been a lot of fun. I do have 5 questions that I'd like to ask everybody before we wrap up. So if you've got a couple of minutes, let's jump into those. Okay.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. So somebody who is interested in this space specifically, do you have a resource that you can share with the audience or point them to somebody else that does?
Definitely. I'll give you the link. We have a development checklist that I will give to you, and then it also has like 10 pitfalls to avoid. That's definitely a resource that we can share with you guys. And then we have a webinar as well that kind of talks through the process at a high level that we'd be happy to share with you as well.
Yeah, we'll put a link to that in the show notes so everybody can get access to that. What is a favorite book that you've listened to recently, or maybe a podcast that is on your weekly listen list?
Yeah, so I just finished Outwitting the Devil. Have you read that by Napoleon Hill?
Heard of that. Yeah,
I heard so many people gave it to me. It's a really interesting read. I usually like to read at like 1.2, 1.3 times. You need this one at 1.
You do? Okay.
It's an absorber one. Yeah. And the interesting part was it was written in 1930 and his wife wouldn't let him release it. So she was gone and they just released it in 2011. Okay. If that gives you any kind of like, forbidden book,
interesting.
Kind of but it's great. It talks about, drifting and non-drifting. And when we're more focused and I call it the time, talent, treasure triangle. When every point in your life, there's only so much time, only so much talent, only so much treasure you have. Okay. And how do you stay in alignment with it? And, they really bring home the drifting and non-drifting, and that's just to stay focused. Like, what do you enjoy doing? What are you passionate about doing? Lean in, become an expert at it. And I really enjoyed that book. I'm probably going to read it a couple more times.
I love it. Yeah, I have heard many people reference that one. Never on this show. I'm a huge fan of Napoleon Hill, so I will definitely pick that one up. Thanks. Is there, in this space, we talk a lot about due diligence because we're primarily dealing with passive investors, but I'm curious, are there due diligence questions that people should be asking when they're thinking about getting into this space that are maybe unique to what it is that you guys are doing?
Yes. Due diligence is like probably what we spend half the time on, like half the course that we do. And one of the things I keep thinking I'm going to give this as a handout, so maybe I'll give it to you guys as a handout first, is I have the 20 required contingencies in any contract that I have with a client. And so people are like 20, I'm like 20. I have 50, to be honest, is the full list, but 20 is where you really want to start, because not only do you want to do the due diligence on the land, you want to do the due diligence on all the people that you're going to work with in the land or the building, all the people you're going to work with in the process. So really controlling the deal before you get in and just buy it is definitely, and then also the due diligence, not only in the property, but the people, and then your team as well. So, having those checks in place is huge.
Love it. Yeah. I would love to get a hold of that checklist.
Yeah.
So I've got, it's about 110 questions now that we go through in our due diligence process when we're vetting deals. But I suspect we can find another 10 plus in your offering there. So please share that if you can before we get this thing published, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. Okay?
Perfect. I will do. Yeah.
Awesome. And a couple of questions here that are kind of fun. One's relevant to GoBundance because we're both involved with that community. But one is, what's a bucket list item you've recently checked off your list, or one you're hoping to in the near future?
So a bucket list item that I checked off my list in the new year is I got a twofer. I got to go scuba diving with my boys. I have two younger kids and my husband. So we got to go scuba diving for the first time. And one of my dreams has always been I'm an aunt. So to basically rent a place and have my nieces and nephews come and just like take care of it, just have them come stay and feed them and give them a vacation because, they're all in their young 20s. So,
Sure.
they have some money, but they don't have enough for like some pretty cool vacations. So I got to do that over New Year's, which was really, really special to me. So
That is awesome. That is awesome. Yeah, it's neat when you can get to a point where you can start giving back to family. I think my wife and I are kind of in that similar point where we want to give to family.
Yeah.
And it just feels good to be able to do that. So very cool.
Yeah. Well,
all right.
Like you talk about with
go
the
ahead.
family, like, do you guys have your family constitution? Like, are you?
No, tell me about that a little bit more.
So, well, it's in the idea came to me in the Tribe of Millionaires and the different constitutions, and then the book What Would the Rockefellers Do? Have you read that one?
Yeah.
So that constitution. So we were on vacation, and I'm trying to. My boys are tweens, and so we're trying to teach them like, what do you do to make money and all that stuff. And so now we have our health and wealth building meetings every single week where we talk about, what are the meals we're making? When are we prepping them? And my youngest, seeing me develop this development course, asked to start learning how to invest in real estate. So he wants to take his college fund and invest in real estate. So we're working through that. We're talking through.
Love it. I love it. The health and wealth meeting. I love that. We have a family meeting each week, but I like the idea of bringing the health and wealth into it. That's great. Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Final question. If you had $100,000 that you had to deploy today and you couldn't put it in your own deal.
So I would put it into whiskey.
Whiskey. Okay.
Because like I said, I'm not a big stock market person. I'm still learning. I'm still absorbing. My friend Jamie is going to listen to this. She's going to be like, Katie. But definitely I would put it into my own deal, but that you restricted me.
Sure.
But yeah, there's I'm learning more about whiskey and the business and spirits, and also what still thrives during recessions and depressions, and
even more so, right? Absolutely. Whiskey. I love it. Yeah. And I just happen to know a whiskey syndicator. So if it comes down to it, let me know. I'll make an intro to them as well.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe we have to talk about.
Very good. All right. Well, Katie, this has been a lot of fun. Like I said, you opened my eyes to a whole new arena and different asset class. So this has just been really, really educational, a lot of fun. So thank you so much for being on the show.
Likewise. Thanks to you for having me. I really appreciate this time. It's been great.
Awesome. All right. To the audience, as always, we encourage you to continue your education journey in passive investing. But more important than that, make the decision to invest in your first or into your next passive investment. I am convinced that once you do, you will just wish that you had started that much sooner. So be sure to join us again next Thursday for another great episode. And don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. And thank you again for joining us today.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. Another episode of The Gentle Art of Crushing It. It was an amazing episode. We know we sure learned a lot, and we hope you did as well. We want to take a second and thank you so much for viewing or listening to this episode. And please just know that we only ask for one favor, and that is to make this life magnificent. Thank you, and have a wonderful day.